Okay. From our studios this week, I'm back home in Los Angeles and Scott is in Tampa. This is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip. He is Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. On Green Tag, we look at the top theme park news each week and discuss why it matters to business professionals. And this week, Halloween.
This is kind of a cool survey and some cool survey results that we think are important and impactful to those of you who do Halloween events or are considering doing Halloween events.
I was emailed data from the HalloweenCostumes.com, who does an annual survey. It's 1,000 people, 1,000 adults in America that they did survey for this data.
Yeah, it's the consumer market. It's the consumer market, not the attractions market.
First of all, basically the question was like, what is your vibe for Halloween this year? And the majority said funny and cozy, and then only 19% said scary. So like that's the first signal. And the second is the rising in costumes. So 30% of the respondents are planning to wear 2 or more costumes this season. And they attributed that actually to events or celebrations, which goes right into the next most interesting part, which is that 70% combined say that organized events are the same or increasing. But if you look in the data, 40% of that are ones that are saying there's more events, including haunted houses, in their area that they are specifically going to. So you do see like a rise in that, and there's more of them and people are interested in going to them, at least the 40% of those people surveyed, which I think is a big chunk. And then when it comes to planning, still most people shop in early October, right? However, a growing chunk, that 25%, are after Labor Day and 17% as early as August, which if you combine those together, right, that's like over 40% that are doing it sometime between Labor Day and August, which is, that's the creep that we've been talking about, the same that we're seeing here. When it comes to searching, I thought it was interesting that already in this year, AI tools make up 8% of searches for people. And of course, the main one is still online search, but AI tools are coming up in that. And then finally, the thing that jumped out to me. So this was interesting because the press release talked about how people are spending more on Halloween and blah, blah, blah. But when I actually looked at the survey results and it broke it down, I would say it's different because when it comes to asking how much people are spending, and keep in mind, this is phrased as how much they're spending overall on Halloween, not just on decorations and costumes. So it's an overall number. And it said 51% are doing the same, roughly the same. 22% are spending more, which you would think is good, but 27% are spending less. So there's more people spending less than there are people spending more. Right, and then you have the baseline.
But you can't take these numbers out of context. What were these numbers last year? How is it trending? Yeah. Is it trending up? Is it trending down? And that I can't answer. I don't know.
So the survey is saying that it is trending up, but only slightly. Right. But then you have this idea of like, well, if you still have a chunk that are looking at spending less, basically the survey is arguing that if you go back and look, basically it's both are happening. Is this what's going on? More people are spending less and more people are spending more, but they're going with the more people are spending more angle. Like that's what they're saying, which is true.
Yeah. And I guess my point is if last year's survey results said only 15% were spending more, and this year 22% are spending more, that means it's trending up.
Yeah.
That means that we're people are spending more. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to dissect in this survey. And once again, let's just talk. We recognize we're talking about a microcosm here. We recognize we're talking about a sample size of 1,000. We recognize we are not talking about attractions specifically, but this is attractions adjacent. So let's go back to only 19% are doing scary themes.
Yep.
So to me, this is fascinating, but not surprising.
That's right.
I think that the reason scary themes are trending down is, I think there are a couple of reasons. I think number one, more and more people are looking to do family costumes and or family themes, especially if you're doing family parties or parties with your kids. And it's much harder to for many people, for the vast majority of people, to take their toddler and cover them in blood. It's just not considered a whole lot of fun or classy, or it's becoming more and more difficult. I also think that people are looking for escape,
Yeah.
and I think they're looking for escape from things that are terrifying. I think there's enough going on in the world right now that is terrifying that they're shying away from it. Interestingly enough, and this is anecdotal, it's just based on my memory, which I don't know whether I'd go there or not, but post 9/11, we trended away from scary and gore.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense that people, are looking for things that are a little bit more fun. They're playing into the fantasy of Halloween, not
Yeah.
necessarily the blood, guts, and gore.
I was thinking similar to what you're saying about people thinking about the fantasy of it, and I was thinking what resonated to me about that is the attractions that are encouraging costumes. And we just talked about, we did the episode on Premium Scream Night, and Premium Scream Night this year allowed costumes, which Universal has never done in Florida. Well, I'm not gonna say they've never done it. To my knowledge, they have not allowed guest wear costumes. I don't know. Maybe they did it a long time ago, but that's different, right, from Japan, which allows people to come in costumes.
Mhm.
They do have costume guidelines, but they do allow it. And in Japan, what is it? It's all cute. I mean, it's the whole kawaii, spooky thing there.
Yep.
And the costumes that I saw at Horror Nights for the Premium Scream Night this year were not scary. They were like people dressed as stuff from Five Nights at Freddy's to take photos with the photo ops. It was just, allusions to other characters or other things. It was more like representing, a character that they like and then putting that character in the world of Horror Nights to take photos, right? So it was interesting because you do see that expansion, right? Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, worry about wearing costumes. Okay, Boogie Bash, everyone's wearing costumes. I mean, this is becoming more of like a piece of the event, a Halloween event thing, which is to show up in costume, which I think then directly ties to this research if you look at it in that
Right. Well, and I also think it's important to recognize that there are more and more parks who are trying to find their way, if they've done the gross and terrifying, and then they're trying to edge their way into this market. They're having a challenge because they're not quite sure how to do it. The moment you put a few drops of cute into an or otherwise terrifying event, you counteract the terror. So Busch Gardens Tampa, for example, is doing both a daytime trick-or-treat event and a nighttime blood, guts, and gore event. Although even in some of the reviews, most of the reviews that I've read of both Horror Nights and Howl-O-Scream here in Florida, is they say that Horror Nights is the longest queues are for the haunts, and Howl-O-Scream, the longest queues are for the rides. They basically said people are going. It appears as though, and again, anecdotal, but I've read two or three different reviews, two for sure, that said Howl-O-Scream is where you go to hang out, kind of like a mall in the 90s. That was one of the quotes. And Horror Nights is where you go for the hardcore horror people. However, in the same reviews, they say that the haunts themselves are actually scarier at Howl-O-Scream than they are at Horror Nights.
Because they're not packed and you're not conga lining as much.
Exactly. Yeah. So so it's an interesting push pull. And I've been doing a lot of digging into this because this year at IAPA Expo in November, I'm doing an edge session called Giggles, Gasps, and Gore, and it's basically the three basic levels of Halloween activations in attractions. And it talks about, I've been exploring what are the advantages and disadvantages of all three of those levels. And, based on this data, the giggles part is trending up, at least when it comes to people buying costumes and decor for their homes. They're out for more fun. They're out to have, they're out to make people laugh as opposed to make people scream and cry.
And I think that both also can be present. I mean, in Hollywood, they brought over a Hamikuma from Universal Studios Japan came
Man,
over to
right.
Universal Studios Hollywood, and that's again like a horror. It's like a zombie teddy bear, right? And I think both can exist also in the same events, which is also new because previously you didn't basically this year there are some of those elements combined with the horror at even events like Halloween Horror Nights, where there are those like funny, silly moments that are combined together.
Well, but
So
fun. I mean, Bill and Ted,
yeah,
was funny, but it was also very gory. It was also
so you get funny,
very
gory,
terror.
and funny, cute. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
funny, cute.
combining these segments.
Yeah, and I think if you put in too much funny, cute, you end up watering down whatever other horror you've got going. If
Yeah.
you bring in an element from another country that's been really popular, I think that's obviously fine, and that's going to be a workable solution. But if you try to, especially in your marketing, if you try to muddy the waters too much, you don't know who you're attracting.
Yeah.
And you don't want to attract the 25-year-old who wants to go and get hammered and gets the crap scared out of him with mom and dad taking the kids to go trick or treating. That is a recipe for disaster.
Well, speaking to that exact point, it's interesting that everyone is acknowledging that there are overall, more events to go to, which means there's more competition. And it reminds me of when we last year we talked about Christmas, and we I think we said something like Christmas is like just put lights on it. It's like everyone, like it's like literally it's like the meme would be like everybody now with lights. Wendy's now with lights. The Arboretum or this thing you normally go to, but like now we've added Christmas lights. I think it's more people are starting to do Halloween, and so the competition is increasing, which makes it more important to not muddy your market.
Right.
But this research also underscores what we've been talking about, which is that the market for non-scary Halloween is actually larger than the market for scary Halloween.
Right. And it is continuing to grow. So that's why, like I said, with Busch Gardens Tampa doing both, they're kind of trying to capture the best of both worlds. And it's, I think, training an audience for the future, for the darker side in the future. I will say that, and again, anecdotally, in my experience, the big money makers are the ones that are more terrifying because they target adults more and the adults spend more. However, that is shifting a little bit as well because the family-friendly ones, the fun family-friendly ones, get mom and dad to buy the extra ice cream, to buy the extra cute whatever, the ears and the tail that the kids want, and so it's. I guess my point is there's room for all of this in this industry, and it's all becoming very profitable. Moving on to the next one, which is the plan to wear 2 or more costumes, this season. To me, that just dives into what we've been talking about for months in various different topics, and that is the desire for people to do stuff. They want to be immersive. They want to be a part of versus going to go see. So,
and I actually think that actually incorporating that makes your event overall more attractive also, because then again, it's an easy way to add a form of interactivity, like you're saying, but it gives them something to do because again, they can do like bring a costume to then participate in the event in some way or take pictures or whatever. But I do think you see that trend overall, though. I mean, because we over the summer we talked about Comic-Con and that whole thing. I mean, it's no different than cosplay. I mean, honestly, like I do think it's pretty similar. The idea of cosplaying at a convention and putting a costume on for a Halloween event, I think they're pretty.
Now, the one thing though, that if you are thinking about allowing this, just make sure that your security is trained differently, because one of the challenges back in the day, back in the Howl-O-Scream days, we did not let guests come in costume, and that was because they would try to become a little too involved. They would start scaring other guests, and there is a huge legal liability there if a guest scares another guest that we as a park had no control over, and the other guest gets injured. So you got to just kind of retrain and rethink how your security is working. Make sure that those costumes do not have anything that can either intentionally or unintentionally become a weapon. But again, if more and more people are going cute, then that's the, I have a brand new client, which happens to be a zoo. It's a very family friendly event. And one of the things that I've seen in their media and B-roll shoots, as well as heard from the staff, is they are shocked as to how many families dress up together.
Yep.
I think that is a bigger and bigger trend. Now, I have really odd and quirky friends, so I have one family who is one of the youngest son, or the son wanted to be one of the plague doctors. Wanted to be one of the. So mom is going as a witch being burned at the stake, and dad is going as an inquisitor.
Funny.
In the red robe. So again, it's still dark, but it's still kind of tongue in cheek dark.
Yeah.
Because the costume of being burned at the stake, for example, is she has on the stake, and then has the fire is her hoop skirt, which has lights in it that light up. I suggested a mini fogger because I think that would be really cool. But
well, yeah, I think group costumes are a huge thing, and it reminds me too of, again, back to what we talked about with the cosplay, which is that that is its own form of entertainment, right? Where you're seeing more and more conventions lean more and more into that because they don't have to do anything.
Right.
They just are like, we're going to have a cosplay showcase. And what is that? They were like one staff member to put them all on right. It's the guests are bringing the entertainment and
a photo op with the logo of the event.
Yep.
Done.
And then it's a bunch of entertainment, and it adds just to the mood of it. And I think that if you're following down what we talked about last week, which is Universal becoming more of a festival or bringing more of that thing, again, what are other big things? Other big things are conventions. And if you want to tap into more of that vibe, I could see this coalescing.
And moving through this study here, 70% say that they are organizing events that are either the same or increasing. That also kind of leans into that. We want to be more a part of it. So they're creating their own events. They're creating their own parties. They're creating their own gatherings, their own get-togethers. But the shopping does not surprise me at all. I will tell you, if you are in the 13% that start the week before Halloween, you're going to get what you get. Don't go in there with a popular IP in your brain, because you won't walk out with it in your shopping bag. Just say.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
There's that.
And then search also does not surprise me. I think that's also very similar to what we see for search for events also. I mean, it's always funny because in most of the world I deal with, it's the, YouTube, it's the social media sphere, which if you add them together is still less than, I know this is about costumes, which is a different thing, but it's very similar in nature in that people are still searching like things to do in my town or areas or whatever. And so I think we sometimes forget how important just the regular old marketing is, as in you're buying advertising, to advertise to people who are looking for things to do in your sector.
Right.
And the spending less. So that thing, 27% spending less, I think that's a significant chunk. That's, over a quarter is going to be spending less. And we talked about that also. I think the answer is we don't know yet. Like, no one knows how Halloween spending is going to shake out. Are people going to choose less events or less decor, or like where is the spending being cut, if it is, and are they still going to do like the traditional, like the event that they always do? I mean, we talked about this with Horror Nights, right? Like $11 cheese sticks is crazy, and the Horror Nights is so expensive, but premium Scream Night sold out. So like, how did those people? I still don't know how people paid for that, and we have no idea. The only thing that came out this week, I can mention
just real quick though, on the spending, the thing that we also have to take into consideration is the 27% that are spending less and the 22% that are spending more. Does that not flatline? Do those not cancel out?
Yeah, that's right. It almost flatlines. So that would be another argument, which is that if anything, it's flatline and slightly down, like 2 or 3% down. But is that
but I can see how people would interpret this as, oh my gosh, they're spending less and making some knee-jerk responses and knee-jerk reactions. And in fact, we were talking just before the show about a couple of different attractions that have already started to make these kinds of alterations. Philip, you've got the data on that, don't you, I think?
Yeah. And then the question, though, is are they making those based off of data, predictive data, or are they doing it based, like, how are they made? So the thing we were going to mention, and this ties to Six Flags, which we will be talking about probably the next show. But so here locally, I'm in the Los Angeles market. We have the 2 Six Flags properties, which is Magic Mountain and then Knott's Berry Farm. So because now after the merger, they're both in the same market. So essentially what happened this last week, which was not reported on by many people in the larger sphere, but us just locally found out about it, is that Magic Mountain has cut all their Thursday days from their calendar, and they have been rearranging it to rebook people or to get refunds, or they've been trying to rearrange tickets for that. And then meanwhile, down at Knott's Scary Farm, they have removed all the Wednesdays from their calendars, and Thursdays are still available for now on Scary Farm, but Scary Farm is a much larger event also, so I would expect that would be fine. But I noticed it, and then I verified it with a few other people, and people were, here locally, it's a big thing because even me, I was trying to change dates for an event with Knott's, and it has been sidebar on that. It has been the most terrible experience I've almost ever had trying to change dates at Knott's. It's ridiculous. There's no one to call. You have to email their support line to change the date, and they take on average 4 days to reply. And then they're like, oh no, this information, we need this. I mean, it's crazy. Like that's just a whole separate conversation about they should just be using AI at this point if it's going to be this bad, or they need to have this is crazy. They need to have a better system. And this is why Six Flags is doing so terribly.
It suggests to me that you're not the only one trying to change dates too. So there's that.
That's true. But then also, this is why Six Flags is going down the shitter, right? They need
but here's the other side of that too. Is it? And I don't know the answer to this. Is it because they're concerned that the Halloween spend is going to be less? Is it because for the first time since the merger, really, they've got two parks that are in competition with one another? So in order to ease some of that, they don't need to have the extra nights. But I will say that, cutting nights, there's pluses and minuses to reducing the run of a show, because Halloween events are usually very labor heavy. There is some savings in reducing nights. However, that means that you have to amortize your capital. That means you have to spend less capital because you don't have the earning power if you're open fewer nights. So you have to make sure that your capital spend gets adjusted accordingly. Now, obviously, if they're making the change at the last minute, they're not thinking about that, but it will come into play next year, if they continue to do it. So, because, there is a certain logic to, we're spending this money to install this stuff. We might as well have as many nights as possible to potentially earn the money back. But since Halloween events are labor heavy, when you don't have an opening, when you don't have a night that you're open, then your labor costs go down. The other thing that I think is going to be interesting, and we won't see this until next year or future years, is when it comes to staffing. If you've promised people a certain number of nights and a certain amount of income during the season, and you reduce that by one night a week, are they going to come back to work for you again next year? Yep. So, and I've worked in situations where it has impacted it, and I've worked in situations where it hasn't done a darn thing. So just something to kind of think about, be aware of, because if you keep making changes last minute, those people that you rely on to make your event special may turn their attention elsewhere.
Well, it is. I think all those points are valid, especially about them competing in the same market and how that maybe changed the dynamics, which I think is probably the strongest argument.
It's the most
And like you
logical.
said,
It's the most logical
yeah,
argument. Yeah.
and like you said, we're not going to know. We're just not going to know until IAPA, right? When people start discussing or you talk about how you're whatever, we're not going to know. I will say that Oogie Boogie Bash, and they expanded their nights this year, right? And most of them have sold out still, and that Halloween Horror Nights is still running every night except Monday and Tuesday in both markets, and they have not reduced yet. And then obviously premium sold out. So that is interesting where you're again seeing this bifurcating thing happening where you're getting and then we previously remember we talked about the other properties that have cut Christmas or cut Halloween at the other Six Flags properties. So it does. I could see your argument about the double market thing. I could also see it with what they said back then, which is that they need to trim operating times.
Right. And when you go into a challenging market, the high end does not see it. I mean, during COVID, for example, auto sales went down for certain brands, went down significantly. Jaguar was not touched. They did not lose any market share. They kept the same.
It's interesting.
It explains why the Disney product and the Universal product are still doing bang up business. They're still selling out. They're still keeping all their nights. Now, if this trend continues, it may impact them, but it's certainly not done it yet.
Yep. Let's see. So really quick, we're almost out of time, but I did visit a few places this weekend before I came back into town. Just really quick, the Dark Nights opened at Hershey Park, and I went there for the opening night. And that event, again, it continues to encapsulate a lot of what we're talking about, that we've been talking about. It's such an enormous value for guests, which is always the first thing I think about, because this year they have 5 haunted houses, 4 scare zones. They have a stage show, they have trick or treating, and then they have the slider showcase from Decade Brigade. All of that is included in a day ticket. And so it's back to that old model of just enormous amounts of value. I mean, like, that's 5 haunted houses. And again, to underscore, they are good.
Plus
they are good haunted houses.
You have to take into consideration plus the park.
Yeah, well, exactly. So they have 50 rides, and that are open, the food and beverage. I mean, it's like the Halloween event is just additive. Like, it's entirely additive.
All added value.
On top of your season passes. There's no extra, not like, again, like Six Flags charging extra for haunted houses. Like, there's no upcharge for any of this. And also the houses are better. I mean, again, they might not be better than Knott's, but I would say they're close. They're very close to, and I actually would argue that the new haunted house they built this year is better than Knott's Mazes. The quality is incredible for the new haunted house that they have this year, which is all kill and fill garage, and it's all themed for an old gas station, harking back to Hershey's past, because some of the owners had gas stations. They own some gas stations. It's a very historic gas station, and there's just what's going on in this garage, and there's really neat scenes in there, just really fun moments in that. And it's still scary. Again, it's scary, but then they still have the cute. It's all these things combined. You have the cute and stuff. You can wear costumes to the event. It's included added value for people that are spending more or less. If they want to spend more, they can just buy dining. They have upgraded dining this year, dining passes. I mean, it's literally a full microcosm of everything we've been talking about.
Yep. And it's working. So that's a good thing. Speaking of working, we've been working for the last half hour, and it's time for us to move on. So guys, thank you all so much. And for those of you who are fans and supporters of Unhinged, we're going to go record that and see what comes out of our mouths there. But for the rest of you, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you next week. On behalf of Philip and myself, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we will see you next week.